I don't know, position ourselves so that we can be in our divinity, so we can have our crowns right, how we can create and not build, when some of us, quite frankly, feel that the men that are available to us, and I'm talking about across the color spectrum, across the age spectrum, trust me, I've done them all, they are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes, they're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
Would you date a bus driver? Would you date
if he owns the bus?
She just said what every black, bougie, feminist thinks. So Eboni K. Williams caused an uproar over the past week or so with her comments saying that she would not date a bus driver. But if he owned the bus, she would. Now, this is a sentiment of black feminists and feminists at large. Because of the lie that they believed that they're independent women, strong women, they don't need a man. And then they get to a certain age and realize that their life is empty. They realize that their life does not have the meaning that they thought it would. That all this career success, climbing the corporate ladder, trying to be like a man, but then they realize it's not worth it. Let's take a listen.
I don't know, position ourselves so that we can be in our divinity, so we can have our crowns right, how we can create and not build, when some of us, quite frankly, feel that the men that are available to us, and I'm talking about across the color spectrum, across the age spectrum, trust me, I've done them all, they are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes, they're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
And so just to start out that conversation, she's starting off from the premise that she's here and men are here because she's reached this level of success. See, that's why when you do things out of the biblical order, things get twisted, things get perverted. Instead of saying, you know what, it's more important for that person to have integrity, for that person to love God, for that person to love their parents, for that person to be respectful and to women, to be an honorable person in a society, that person have a good name. Now, what she's coming from is that these dudes don't have the education that I have. So therefore, there's this gap. And how can we bridge this gap?
Would you date a bus driver? Would you date
if he owns the bus? If he owns it.
See, and that's the sentiment that a lot of black feminists, a lot of black bougie women think, unfortunately, because it's not a biblical mindset. It doesn't matter if the dude drives the bus or owns the bus. That dude that owns the bus could treat you like dirt.
He owns the bus.
That's the problem. That's the problem. That's the problem. Because the standards and requisites, and I'm not talking about him laying on his sofa playing video games all day. I'm not talking about that. But the standards and the criteria that we use to measure men is off for who we are as women and who they are in this society. I would date a bus driver if he loved driving the bus, if he was a man of integrity, if he was good to his mama, if he treated me well.
So Ayala, which, you know, I definitely don't agree with her spirituality, but she makes the point. See, the problem in this society has bent so much towards women and feminism over the last 50 years. Women do not have a clear sense of what a true man looks like. And they really don't have a sense if they're not Christian. And unfortunately, a lot of Christian women don't have a good sense of what a man looks like. A true biblical man. A true biblical man shows servant leadership. A true biblical man humbles themselves, loves God more than anybody else, and is respectful in the community. A true biblical man will give his life for his family. A true biblical man focuses on purpose and not necessarily monetary gains or superficial things. Too many of us in the black community, too many of these women like Eboni K. Williams, they'll love a dude to drive a Beamer and have like 4 or 5 gold chains and have all this cash be flashing around. They'll think that's success. That's not success. That dude will treat you like dirt. And there have been plenty of examples where that has happened. But unfortunately, because you don't have a biblical mindset, because you've been convinced by these feminists, these white liberals, that get the bag, girl, you don't need a man, by some of these artists like Beyonce and others like that you don't need a man. But then when you get to the point of your life when you want one, you're not ready to receive one because you think that he has to come to this level instead of you humbling yourself. That's pride. That's all pride that she's exhibiting right there, full of pride. So Because of all this backlash that she received for this comment, she had to come back and listen to how she came back.
For the 50,000 plus comments posted on social, I only saw a handful that even considered the possibility of a bus owner being a more aspirational position and recognizing that I am actually speaking and pouring into the ascension of black men when I said what I said.
See, that's another thing too. Unfortunately, in the black community, black women, because we have a matriarchal society, feels that's their job to speak into the lives of black men, to elevate black men. That's not your job. That's not your job. In the Bible, your job is to be a helpmeet. Your job is to assist. Not necessarily speaking to our lives. You're there to help elevate. There's a difference. Because when you're speaking from a position of authority, of being higher in the hierarchy, if you will. But when you call it alongside, you're encouraging. There's a difference between speaking into somebody's life and encouraging. That is not encouraging.
But see, no, some of y'all were too busy naming and shaming me personally and black women in general as undesirable, gold diggers, and much worse. Now, I suspect that some of y'all are the same men that were bringing home C's and D's on your report cards, only to then be coddled by parents that said, well, that's okay, as long as you're doing your best.
Now, this is the Biblical Conservative channel where we see things from a biblical perspective. And when she said that part I agree with. Too many of us have been coddled, especially men. We've been babied. Men have been desensitized to what it means to be a high achiever. We have been, and especially in our community. Too many men think it's okay to just coast and not to excel. That's why I always say, we're not victims, we are empowered for greatness. That greatness is on the inside of us, but too many of us don't tap into that. Because number one, we don't know how to tap into that. And number two, we don't have the courage to tap into that. When we step up as men and be leaders in our society, then you will see a difference. People like Eboni K Williams won't have any room to speak and say things like she said, because bus drivers would be respectable. She would be able to see that, wow, man, I don't care this dude a bus driver. This dude's respectable. This dude's a leader in the community. This dude's doing stuff in his community. So to that point, I have to give her kudos. That is so true. Too many of us have been coddled. Too many of us have been allowed to coast without doing our best, without excelling and achieving for more.
Well, listen, I love and believe in the excellence of black men. So no, my dear, C's and D's or any other form of mediocrity is not okay. No, I will not create a soft place for you or anybody that I love to fall comfortably into the bigotry of low expectations.
Yep, I tell my children all the time, Jesus did not die for you to be average. I personally don't accept average because to me, average is not doing your best. Average is what society at large expects of black men. And I'm speaking of black men right now. Average is what they expect of black men. They expect black men to have 3 or 4, 5, 6 baby mamas. They expect black men to not have jobs. They expect black men to sell drugs. They expect black men to do anything that is not productive in society. So that is the soft bigotry of low expectations. It is. And that bigotry has existed for a long time. That's why I have this channel to push back against that bigotry, to push back against that prevailing notion that no, that's not the way that black people and black men were originally. No, that's not. Black men have agency. Black people have agency. And no, it's not acceptable to have 4 or 5 or 6 baby mamas. It's not acceptable to not stay there and take care of your child. It's not acceptable to not be a responsive and productive citizen in society. That is not being black. That is not blackness. That is what the people that want to destroy America, the people that hate black people, want black people to think.
So I'm gonna say one more time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with driving a bus. My mother Gloria drove one for years. But could it be that black America has been sold a narrative of average, regular, and typical being good enough for us? Well, see, that's called white supremacy. And in this case, it takes the form of conditioning black Americans to happily accept being a permanent American underclass. But see, because I know the truth about black folk in America, no, average is not and will never be good enough for me. And the gag is, I don't think it's good enough for you either.
Wow. Wow, Eboni K. Williams. I hear you right there. I hear your point. And in some ways, yes, I do agree. But you have to understand something. You have bought into the lie of feminism. And the lie of feminism says that you can achieve and have everything you want in life. That's not true. In life, there have to be compromises. In life, there have to be sacrifices if you want to have the kind of life that you desire. And the idea that this notion that I spoke about earlier is white supremacy. But it's not white supremacy from the usual corner that I know everyone who's listening to this channel for the most part is thinking about. That, oh, it's Republicans, oh, it's the conservatives. No, the white supremacy that you talk about is critical race theory. The white supremacy that you're talking about, that she's referring to, is when they tell you, no, we're not gonna have grades anymore. We're not gonna require you to take the achievement exam because, you know, black people just can't do it. It's culturally biased. See, that's that soft bigotry of expectations. And that's what they do to the black community. That's what they do to our children. But yet, do you see them saying that at these private schools? At these prestigious schools? Do you hear them saying that stuff? Of course not. Because it's a double standard that too many people in the community don't recognize. When they dumb things down for you, that means they're setting you up for a permanent residency in the poor underbelly of America. Let's be real. When they dumb things down for our children, they're setting them up to be permanent serfs to the government. We don't want that. We do not want that because we're not victims. We are empowered for greatness. We have agency, especially if you call yourself a believer in Jesus Christ. There's no way for us to settle for average. We are not average. Jesus did not die for average.